Uh, okay. Today's Masechta Bez Hashem begins Abba Rosh Hashanah Haim. And let us begin. I just wanted to mention something. I was looking up on the halachas of feeding animals on Shabbos. Generally, like we discussed that yesterday a little bit, but generally, feeding an animal on Shabbos is not if it's a stray animal or a stray bird. The consensus of the halacha is not to permit, because it's muktzah, not to permit just throwing out food for them. But you see sometimes a minig Yisrael will override the halacha. And the minig Yisrael is that on Shabbos Shira, I know my grandfather used to do this, would throw out
bread to the birds.
Bread to the birds. And in halacha it says absolutely don't do that, because it's muktzah. They don't rely on you for food. So don't do that. And yet you can't tell the people who have a minig to do it, you can't tell them the halacha says differently. So that's very interesting.
It's a hard minhag to understand.
Well,
because there's certain things you might end up throwing crumbs in the garbage, and people don't like throwing bread ever into the garbage.
Oh, it's not about that. But then you don't do it every week. There's just Shabbos Shira, something.
No, but I'm saying to begin with, I know someone, a frum guy. I was eating by him on a Shabbos afternoon, and there were lots of people there, and he said, "I know you're all going to be upset, but I'm not throwing my crumbs in the garbage." And he just took them all and went out to the backyard. He gave them to the bird, and he said, "This is what I do, and I don't care what you think." I mean, that's what he said.
Could it fit under what we learned in Masefes Beya, Mutoshi Shogin Volume Zid, and you have to think about what would be the Isser.
Oh, right.
It would be Mukser, it would be Rabbanon. But that was a whole Gemara. Hadrais Had Rabbanon. It's a Darshan Furish Patara, like Tosefes Yantif. Maybe that's why. Maybe.
Yeah.
It's not the rice according to most.
No, it's just muktzah.
Right, it'd be muktzah, which most assume is only Rabbanon. It's only that type of muktzah.
Right. So interesting. That's 100%. That's the only, this is the way it was. My grandfather did it, and that's what I saw at home. But now that I look at the halacha, he wouldn't have listened to me anyway. So I told him that I learned something.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
It's interesting because my father-in-law, sometimes he would come a couple of months out of the year from Israel. He was a Holocaust survivor, as my mother-in-law was. And he basically lived on bread, crumbs of bread. And anytime we had to throw some bread out that was very stale, he would kiss it and then throw it in the garbage.
Oh, wow.
Give it a kiss. Yeah. And it said he was so emotionally overtaken by the fact that he had to throw bread out. He gives it a kiss and throw it out, a small piece.
Yeah.
So, that's also based. That's just Gemara and Brachos. That we do Ein Zarek and Sapas.
Right.
That's also
exactly.
Even if it's not going to get destroyed.
Right.
Unlike other foods that if you can throw an apple, it won't get destroyed. You can
that's
throw
what my friend said.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's a basis for this in learning.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let us begin. Arba'ah Rosh Hashanah Haim. There are four Rosh Hashanahs of the year. Even though the Masechta is called Rosh Hashana, the one Rosh Hashanah, which is what we know, the first day of Tishrei, but actually the Mishnah says that there are four of them. 4 times a year, which have a din like Rosh Hashanah, probably is Asr, Behesped, and Tainus those days. So the first thing is Be'echad B'Nisan. The first day of Nisan is a new year. New year for what? So the Mishnah says Rosh Hashanah LaMalachim, to name the years of the king. It automatically, no matter when the king took office, and Jewish king, even if he took office in Adar, as soon as Nisan comes around, we already count the next year. So if Adar was his inauguration, then 1 month later starts year number 2. Now, that's what the Gemara, and that's the discussion of today's Gemara. And Rashi explains it's the reason why they did it is for the peace of the king. He should see that we respect him, and because of that, we date all our shtaros, all our bills of sale based on the year, what year of the king it was. And the Mishnah says for Regalim, we'll leave that. It's the first, Nisan is the first Rosh Hashanah for the Yom Tivs. What does that mean? We'll see that in the Gemara, but basically it means that Pesach is considered to be the first Yom Tiv, Shavuos is the second, and Sukkot is the third Yom Tiv. What's the halachic matter? We'll discuss that in the Gemara. So Echad Nisan is one type of Rosh Hashanah. Be'echad be'elul, in the first day of Elul, so Rosh Hashanah, that is the new year, L'maaseh behema. We know that if you have a stable of animals, kosher animals, and it gives birth, so then each year, each 10th born, you have to bring it up give it away as a carbon, bring it up as a carbon meiser behema. Now, and so it's important to do this each and every year. So you can't say, oh, I'm going to take off 2 from next year, or take off my meiser behema from 1 year to the next. In other words, not give off meiser behema 1 year and give it off double next year, whatever happens next year. No, each year you have to give off meiser behema, and the anniversary for that best technically you should have separated meiser behema before that is the first day of El. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon says it's Bechad b'Tishrei. It's the first day of Tishrei. The Mishnah says the third Rosh Hashanah is Bechad b'Tishrei, and the first day of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah l'shanim. It's the Rosh Hashanah of years. Now, I would think that Echad b'Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah l'shanim means that if you want to count Tafshin Pei Beis and Tafshin Pei Gimel, etc., so that's Echad b'Tishrei, but that's not really what it means, and we'll see more about that in the Gemara. Echad b'Tishrei is the anniversary of counting Shemitah and Yovel. So as soon as the first day of Tishrei comes, like this year, one is not allowed to. It starts the obligation and the Isur to plant and plow in Eretz Yisrael, and everything has to be free. Yovelus in the counting of Yovel. So the first day of Tishrei is the Rosh Hashanah for that, and then after that, next year, Echad b'Tishrei starts the first year of the Shemitah cycle. Also, the first day of Tishrei is Lantia. Very interesting. You automatically turn the year on a tree sapling. In other words, if you plant a tree, let's say in Tammuz, right? So then when it comes to Tishrei, already it's year number 2. So what's the difference? Because the first 3 years, you cannot have Hanoah from the tree. So Lantia means that on the first day of Tishrei, automatically we switch into year 2, and now it's the second year into its Orla cycle, and then the following Tishrei, it's going to be in the third year of its Orla cycle. So Echad Tishrei automatically turns everybody a year older. V'la Yerakos, and for vegetables. What's that mean? That means that, as you know, that in the 7-year Shemitah cycle, excluding the 7th year where there's no Trumas or Maisris, the first 2 years of Trumas are basically, you give off Meiser Sheni. The 10% besides to the Levi, you give another 10% Meiser Sheni, which you bring up to Yerushalayim and you eat it there. But on the 3rd year and the 6th year, so in other words, the first 2 and the 4th and 5th, you give off Meiser Sheni. On the 3rd and the 6th year, you give off Meiser Ani. So it's important to know when this vegetable, which year of the Shemitah cycle is this vegetable. You see, a vegetable, what determines what year is a vegetable is when you picked it. So if you picked it before Echad b'Tishrei, so you give off the meiser of the previous year. If you picked it after the first day of Tishrei, so let's say this year will be year 3, so you'll give off the meisres of what it was after the first day of Tishrei. So the determining factor of deciding that is the first day of Tishrei. Be'echad b'Shvat, the first day of Shvat, Rosh Hashanah li'ilon, is the Rosh Hashanah for the tree, K'divrei Beishamai. These are the words of Beishamai. Odd expression over here. Normally it should say Divrei Beishamai. It says Kin Divrei Beishamai, like the words of Beishamai. Be'echad b'Shvat, so the first day of Shvat. Again, for a tree, what determines what year? Is it the year that you give off Meiser Sheni, or is it the year that you give off Meiser Ani? That's the first day of Shvat. And by a tree, it's a little different. You have to know when the fruit blossom on the tree. By a tree, we go bosa chanota. So it depends. If it depends which year it blossomed, that will determine what meiser you're supposed to give off. But the year switches over in the year on the first day of Shvat. So here you have it. Echad Nisan, Echad Elul, Echad Tishrei, Echad Shvat. These are the 4 Rosh Hashanahs. Beis Hillel, Beis Hillel says, Bachamisha Aser Boy. Actually, the switch over for trees is on the 15th day of Shvat. On the 15th day of Shvat, that's when it switches, not the first day of Shvat. So, by the way, it's interesting that it doesn't say Rosh Hashanah lo'ilonos, Rosh Hashanah for trees, as it says plural. La'irakos is plural. Rosh Hashanah l'shanim is plural. Yovlois is plural. Le'ilim for the tree. From here is a remez that during the first day of Shvat or Beis Hillel, 15th day of Shvat, is Rosh Hashanah for that tree, that it's a good time to pray to have a good esrog. That's what they say from the Bnei Yissaschar, that it's Rosh Hashanah for that tree that's going to grow your esrog, and therefore it's a day of prayer for that. All right, that's what they would do. So the Gemara. So we said Be'echad B'Nisan Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim, and the first day of Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah of Malachim. Again, they used to count the shtaras to the melech, to the king, and they used to date their shtaras. So Rosh Hashanah for the kings, that automatically he turns another year older, is first day of Nisan. So the Gemara that's asked, Lamai Hilkasa, why did they, the Gemara, the way Rashi explains, not what the halachic ramification is, why did they set a special day to count for kings? Why can't we say that each king should start from the day he started in an office, right? Why would I need to know? Why would I have to make it a universal year switch, Rosh Hashanah, for every single king, that every single king, the year changes on the first day of Nisan? Why is that? Amar Rav Chizda says, Lishtarais. The answer is because they used to date shtars. They used to date bills of sale, loan agreements to the date that the king took office, to the year that he's in office. So now, and what's the problem? The Tanan we learned in the Mishnah, Shitrei Choiv Hamukdamim. If you have a loan obligation that was written too early, for example, let's say the loan took place in Nisan, right? The loan took place, let's say the loan took place in Iyar, okay? And you wrote that the loan took place in Nisan. So the date on the shtar says that the loan took place earlier than the transfer of money. So then the Mishnah says that is psulin. That is invalid shtar. What does that mean? That means like this, that normally when you take a loan, the person that took the loan, the borrower, is putting actually, as the borrower has now a lien on his property. The lender has a right that in case the borrower can't pay back, he could recollect from the property. Suppose the borrower sold the property to somebody else, then the lender has a right to collect from where the borrower sold the property and said, you had no right to buy this property. I have to, that's what you have, title insurance. I have first rights to this property, and therefore I'm taking it away from you. That's called lukuches. You can take it away from those that bought it. But the problem is, if you have a shtar that was written too early, and the date on the shtar is written earlier than the actual loan transaction, then you can invalidate the shtar from ever collecting from items that were sold, from putting a lien on anybody. Why? Because look at the churban that could come out of it. When you loaned somebody, and if the loan took place later, and you wrote the date on the shtar earlier, it'll come out that you'll be collecting from property, putting a lien on a property that was sold prior to the actual loan, when you're not supposed to. Because if the loan took place in Iyar and the guy had a property that he sold in Nisan, and your date on your shtar was predated to Nisan, then you're going to come collect from that property and put a lien on that property that was sold when you didn't have a right to do so. Therefore, if it was written too early, then they invalidated the whole shtar, and you can never collect from put a lien on any property, even if you had a right to do that, even if it was a property that he sold in Sivan Tammuz of, you invalidated the whole star. So that's an important point. If it's a predated star, it's possible. But if the star is post-dated to the loan, that means the loan took place in Iyar and you're post-dating it, then saying that it took place in Sivan or Tammuz later, then it's ksherim, because nothing bad can happen on that case. No michsho can happen in that scenario. Now, so what's the point? So point is like this, that suppose, you see, they didn't really have an understanding of when a recollection on internet, so you could look up when the king took office. In fact, sometimes it led to confusion. Some people didn't know exactly when a person took office. I bet you if I asked anybody in the shir, when did the Governor Hochul take office after Cuomo, you're never going to be able to tell me the exact date. You know what happened in the summer, but you don't remember the exact date. It's actually August 24th. But so therefore, what's going to happen like this? Listen to this. They're going to come. They're going to write a star. They're going to write a star and say that the star was written in Kislev. The Kislev star says this was the 3rd year of the king, that the loan happened. But then the Edom say, we also saw that the loan happened in Tammuz. And the loan actually happened in Tammuz. And the date on the star is written in Kislev. And they both say, the Edom say it was the 3rd year of the king. We don't know. That's it. So now, sometimes it depends on the king. Sometimes Tammuz comes before Kislev. Tammuz comes before Kislev when, if the king took office, let's say in Iyar or Sivan, then in his cycle, Tammuz comes before Kislev. So if the star is written in Kislev, which is Hanukkah time, and the loan actually took place in Tammuz, then it's a post-dated star, it's kosher. But if the king took office in between Tammuz and Kislev, let's say he took office in Tishrei, right? So in his cycle, Kislev comes before Tammuz. So basically, if the loan took place in the 3rd year of the king, and the star is written in Kislev in the 3rd year of the year of the king, that means it's a predated star. The star is dated in Kislev. The loan took place in the 3rd year of the king, but much later in Tammuz. Oh, so therefore it could come out. We don't know if people don't have exact date and a way to have a record of when this king took office. They know about it's the 3rd year. Such a mistake can happen that you don't know if a certain star is predated or post-dated. You don't know if it's predated and it's a puzzle star, or it's a post-dated and it's a kosher star. Therefore, they made it one general rule. Nisan is always the number that causes a Rosh Hashana for a melech, and therefore always it's going to be the order of Tammuz coming first and then Kislev coming afterwards, because that's the way it is. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, and then Tammuz, and then until Kislev. That's always going to be the case. So you'll never have a problem with months to know if it's before or it's predated or postdated. So that's why they made the Rosh Hashanah for Jewish kings Echad B'Nisan. Very important point. Okay. Tanu Rabbanim. The rabbis taught this is easy. Melech Sh'amad Be'esrim V'Tishri Be'adar. Let's say a melech took office at the 29th day of Adar. Okay? Kevan Shehegia Echad B'Nisan. As soon as the first day of Nisan comes, also Lo Shana, we have the year was completed, right? Because, and he's in year 2, right? He only was one day of a king, already Nisan, it's year 2. Let's say he took office on the first day of Nisan. The year doesn't count until he reaches another Nisan. So sometimes you can have a one day as your entire year, and sometimes you have 354 days as your entire year. If you took office on the first day of Nisan, then you have to wait the next Nisan to year 2. But if you took office on the 29th of Adar, one day later is Nisan, you're already in year 2. Amamar, we learned the teaching before. Melech Shama ben Esra Matisha Ba'adar Kevin Shegiacha Benisan Soon as the first day of Nisan comes, he took office on 29th of Adar. Also Loishana, the year is finished. He starts year 2. So we go to Amid Beis. Kamashmalam, this teaches us 2 things. The Nisan and Rosh Hashanah Malachim. That Nisan is automatically the Rosh Hashanah, the new year for kings, and therefore the year switches numbers on Nisan, the first day of Nisan. V'yom echad b'shana chashu shana, and one day of the year is considered a year. So that's a very important point. You might think you need 30 days at least to be considered a year. No, one day, and then the king could go into the year number 2. Now the Mishnah writes to continue. If he took office in the first day of Nisan, then you don't switch till next Nisan, till the next year Nisan. So we would have to wait 353 days till the following Nisan. So the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that simple? If you tell me the Rosh Hashanah of Malachim is Nisan, so certainly if he took office the first day of Nisan, wait till next year Nisan to change the year. It matters. I need the Chiddush to tell you is that the Imne Alema Adar, he was voted into office in Adar. If this king was voted into the office in Adar, but didn't actually take over power till Nisan, so meaning the same, I would have thought since he was already voted in, so Nimna Alei Tartishnin, let it call it the second year, because he was already given, he's the president-elect, he's the king-elect. So therefore, this would be year 2. Kamash Malon, no, that we don't count the election. We count only from when he took office, and therefore only from Nisan Aleph is his first day in power, and therefore he has to wait a full year to count to year 2. Tana Rabbana. The rabbis taught another brisa, and then we'll explain this brisa. Meis ba'adar. The person died in Adar. The king died in Adar. And another king took over in Adar. So let's say in the 5th day of Adar, one king died. In the 10th day of Adar, another king took office. So if you're writing a star, let's say you're writing a star sometime in Adar, you can say you can write the star. It's the year such and such of the dead king. You can write it. So it's let's say it was his 9th year and then he died. You could write the star with the heading, it's the year of such and such of the dead king, or it's the first year of the new king. You have a choice because they're both kings in the same year. Meis ben Nisan, let's say he died in Nisan. So he died in Nisan and somebody took office in Nisan. Same idea. So again, I still count it. You can still count it as the year of the dead king, right? You can as the year of the dead king, and also the year of the new king. So let's say he died
only for that month.
No, for the whole year. So let's say this was 10th year of king such and such, and he got into Nisan. It's his 10th year. The 10th of Nisan, he died. So the entire year that you're writing shtaris, you could write it. It's the 10th year of this dead king. So if you're writing a star in Siva and Tammuz, you could write it of the dead king that died in Nisan time, or
even if he was king for one day.
Even for king for one day.
Right.
And that's the chiddush, that even though the one day he was a king for one day for one time this year, it's as if he's the king the entire year. Right? Interesting.
Yeah.
And then ulazeh, and you can do it for the dead king, also for the live king takes office. You can count it year number 1. Now, but here's the catch: Meis ba'adar, the old king died in Adar. For Ahmad Acher Tachta ben Nisan, somebody took office in Nisan time. So then it depends when you're writing the star. Moinin Rishayna, if you wrote a star in Adar, then you count it for the dead king, Larishain. Ushniya, but if it's already in the second year, Lashani, then you do it for the second king, for the new king. So since the second king took office in Nisan, and that's the Rosh Hashanah Malachim, so he's the only king in that year. So if you write a star in Nisan time, you only write it in the name of the new king. If you write a star in Adar, you write it only in the name of the old king. So let us discuss this further, and let's see what it says over here. Amamar, we learned above. We learned before, Meis ba'adar, the king died in Adar, v'omar acha tachta ba'adar, and somebody else took the office in Adar. You have a choice who to write the date of, from the dead king or the live king. So the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that simple? As simple. I mean, they both were in that year. So the Gemara says, Mahu desema, I should not give you a choice. Shata lebeitre loy manina. We don't give you a choice to date a star with two different kings. Either it's the old king or the new king. Let's see, Rashi says. Rashi says you should not write the year of the new king, only for the dead king, because the dead king was there most of the year. So every star, even if you write it in Adar and the new king took over, don't write the star in his name. Kamash Malan, that you could write the star in the name of the new king if you chose. Meis benisan, this is what you said. If he died in Nisan and somebody else took office in Nisan, you could write the star for both, the dead king and the new king. So the Gemara says, Pshita, this is simple. So Mahu Desema, this is what you wanted to say, Steve. Ki Amrin, and when do I say Yom Echa B'Shana Chashashana? When is one day of the year considered a year? That's if it's Chavtes Adar. By the end of the year, you say, okay, he was there at the end of the year. When the year switches in year 2, B'Soif Hashana. But if he died in the beginning of the year, he died Beis Nisan, or the 10th of Nisan, I would say he only had 10 days of the year. You wouldn't say that would consider him as if he lived the entire year. Kamash Malan, that teaches you that you can, since this is considered his year, and therefore you can date the star both to the new king or the old king that died, even if it happened in Nisan time. Then we said, Meis ba'adar v'oman achar tachta b'Nisan. He died in Adar and somebody took office in Nisan. So it depends when you write the star. If you wrote it in Adar, do it to the dead king. But if you're writing it in Nisan time, you do it for this new king, the second king, right? Because they're not overlapping in the same year. So the Gemara says, Pshita, this is simple. So the Gemara says, Loi, not so. It's not so simple. Tzricha, I needed you to tell me this. The Imni Alema Adar. We're talking about a case that the second king was inaugurated, he was voted into office in Adar. But more than that, Umelech ben Melechu, because he's a king and a son of a king. So it's a Yerusha. Usually kingdoms, Rashi explains that generally in Jewish kings, they always offered the job to the son of the king first. But they checked him out to see if he's worthy to be a Jewish king. But he has rights first. If he's a Yerushalayim and could fit even though he's not the best person, if he can do the job, then we'll let him have it. So if this is a son of a king, so it's almost like a shoo-in, and they voted him in Adar, but since he didn't take power till Nisan, but that's, I would think, but he's like a shoo-in already. Mao the same, Nimnale Tartanshin. This would be his second year. And this would be like year 2. And even in the first year, let's say you wrote a star in Adar, you should write for both the dead father or the son that's eventually taken over. Kamash Malan, no, since he didn't take power until Nisan. So if you're writing it in Adar, you can only do it for the dead king and not for the new king. And in Nisan, you do only the new king. So the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan explained, Menayim lamalachim she'ein nemoyin lam el miusin. Now here is like it's, even though it seemed to be that we just discussed that it was a logical decision to make that the Rosh Hashana should be on in one universal way, to make the kings have one universal Rosh Hashana. But how do you know that they chose Nisan? Is there a source in Tanakh that Nisan is the year Rosh Hashanah for Jewish kings? So Amar Rabbi Yochanan Menayim lamalachim. How do I know for kings she'ein moinen lahem el minisan, that they don't count the new year only from Nisan? Shneimar he b'shmeinim shana v'arba'im shana. It's the 480th year. Let's say Bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. It was the 480th year that they left Mitzrayim. Now, right over here, the pasuk should stop, and it's talking about Shlomo HaMelech is deciding to build the first Beis HaMikdash. So what it should say, Bashana Haravias B'Melech Shloimeh. It's the 4th year of the king of Shloimeh. Or Malach Shloimeh was the king already 4 years. But what the pasuk does say is Bashana Haravias, it's the 4th year. B'Chodesh Ziv on the month of Iyar. Ziv is another name for Iyar. Hu HaChodesh Hasheni, which is the 2nd month. Lim like Shloimeh al Yisrael, when Shloimeh was the king of the Jewish people. So something is wrong with this pasuk. What it does on purpose is to put the word Bashana Ravias next to, let's say, Bnei Yisrael. The 4th year of the king have to do with the Jews leaving Mitzrayim. Malchus Shloimeh Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's a juxtapose the kingdom of Shlomo to leaving of Mitzrayim. Ma Yitzias Mitzrayim min Nisan. Just like the counting of when we left Mitzrayim is from Nisan. That means if it's the 30th year that we left from Nisan, from Yitzias Mitzrayim, it would be, every Nisan is like considered year 1, or the year changes over for the dates that we left Mitzrayim. So Yitzias Mitzrayim, leaving Mitzrayim, we always count from Nisan. Malchus Shloimeh, the king of Shlomo, Nisan is a Jewish king. His year changes in Nisan. Now the Gemara asks this question: how do you know Yitzias Mitzrayim we count from Nisan? Maybe it switches year in Tishrei, like most things switch years in Tishrei. In other words, the Jews left Mitzrayim. Okay, maybe 6 months later in Tishrei, that's already considered year 2 of the Jews leaving Mitzrayim. How do you know that when it comes to Yitzias Mitzrayim, you have that the year doesn't switch until the following year, Nisan? How did we know that? So the Gemara says, "Loi sal kedaitich." You can't have such a havamini. You can't think like that, because the Chumash obviously says this. The Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, "Vayal Aharon HaKohen El Har Hahar." Aharon HaKohen went to the high mountain, Al Pi Hashem, according to the mouth of Hashem, and this is the day that Aharon walked up a mountain and passed on. By Yom Hashem, he died there. When did Aaron die? Aaron died in the 40th year the Jews left Mitzrayim. It was the month of Av, the 1st of the month. So fine. So Aaron died on the Chodesh Av. Then, obviously, Moshe lived a little bit longer. And then the pasuk says, in the month of the 11th month, the first day of the month, Moshe gave his final farewell to the Jewish people, which is in the month of Shvat. So, Midikoy Ba'av, the Chumash says that when the Chumash describes dates in the month of Av, Shnas Aboim. It's Av, and it's still called the 40th year. Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. Then it comes to Shvat, Shnas Aboim. It calls 40th year. So from Av to Shvat, you have a whole bunch of months, and the year didn't switch to year number 41. Michlal, the Rosh Hashana Lav Tishrei. It's not Tishrei. It's not Elul. It's not Cheshvan or Kislev, Teves. So it's not Tishrei. So maybe the year would switch to 41 when it comes Nisan. So we see clearly that Yitzias Mitzrayim is counted from Nisan, and Huadin Malchus Yisrael. So the Gemara says, one last question. The Gemara says, okay, you know that from the Chumash, but here it says Aaron died on the 40th year that the Jews left Mitzrayim. Here it says that Moshe made his final farewell speech on the 40th year of what? Doesn't say it's the 40th year the Jews left Mitzrayim. Could it be that it's a year later? It's 40 years after the Jews built the Mishkan. As you know, the Mishkan was built a year after they left Mitzrayim. So the Gemara says, Bishlam Ahech, by Aharon, beforish the Yitzias Mitzrayim. It says explicitly that it was by Yitzias Mitzrayim. Elahai, the Moshe's farewell speech, how do you know it was the 40th year of Yitzias Mitzrayim? Dilmo lahakomas Mishkan. Maybe it was the 40th year from the inauguration and the setup of the Mishkan. How do you know? So the Gemara says, no, I have a Gzeir Shava. The Amar Papa. Shnas Esrim Gzeir Shava. In another place where Papa said, it says the 20th year and the 20th year, it's mostly teaching that whatever says by 1/20th year, you apply it to the other 20th year. Wherever he said it in another location. But what the point is, Hochanami in our case, Shnas Aboim. It uses the similar word, Shnas Aboim by Aharon, Shnas Aboim, let's say Mitzrayim, and Shnas Aboim by Moshe Rabbeinu, Aboim Shana. So we can say that just like by Aaron, it tells you it's, let's say, Bnei Yisrael Meretz Mitzrayim. So also by Moshe, even though it doesn't say so, we can apply that it also occurred on the 40th year that they left Mitzrayim. So Shnasa Boim Shnasa Boim Zeoch Anam Shnasa Boim Shnei Ma Kan Yitzis Mitzrayim, just by Aaron it was by Yitzis Mitzrayim. Avkan Yitzis Mitzrayim, so also by Moshe Rabbeinu it was by Yitzis Mitzrayim. So the final point is that we said when we discussed today that the Rosh Hashana for Jewish kings is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Where do we know that from? We know that from Shlomo HaMelech. By Shlomo HaMelech, the pasuk seems to be a little written strangely to teach you that the year fourth of that year's change by Shlomo HaMelech, who's a Jewish king, it's dated the year Rosh Hashanah for Shlomo HaMelech will be similar to the Rosh Hashanah of Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is Nisan time. That's the comparison over here. That's the point. Rosh Hashanah Melachim is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Fine.
Where exactly did we stop?
We stopped on 4 lines from the bottom. You're going
to put it on visual DAS?
Yes, I'm going to put it on visual DAS. Yes.
Yes, I'm looking at it. I see a picture of you October the 5th on Daf Yomi Beta Daf 35 with Mr. Mitganger of Sholem. Is that him?
Yes.
Yeah, I see him.
Yeah, you can look at his number. There's 7.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Very moving.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Shkoyach.
Very good.
Shkoyach.
A good enough, Shikoyach. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, Baruch.